and welcome to episode 61 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hennig. We haven't had a conversation for a little while because there's been a pandemic going on. There's a lot of things that have been uncertain for a long time. But I wanted to have a bit of an informal conversation about the future of the CW because this being the summer with the final season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvel is slowly getting around to releasing their pre-planned schedule of shows with shows like The Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney+. I know a lot of attention is going to be turned to them while the rest of the fall is going to be potentially absent of a lot of the CW and DC shows. So I want to get on to some of the news with Batwoman and Supergirl, what the future holds for different CW shows, and all of that in the light of the fact that there was a non-DC CW show that was abruptly canceled as of July 3rd. So let's open up a cold one and get started on episode 61 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. So as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a shutdown of all television and movie production across the board. And now that we're in July, there's slowly opening up the potential for shows and movies to start filming again as long as in certain locations. For example, places like Prague are allowing crews to come back and film there, which is important for Marvel. We know that Vancouver has put themselves out there to be an NHL bubble city. Well, they're not going to be a bubble city, which now opens the city up to allow networks like CBS and the CW to begin planning flying back in to start doing production. And I want to touch on what the future holds for the DC CW shows, because before the pandemic, it looked like it was full speed ahead for a lot of the shows. You know, The Flash had been renewed, Supergirl, Batwoman, DC Legend of Tomorrow. We knew Stargirl was coming out this summer. So there was a lot of shows in production that looked like it was going in a certain direction. But there's a lot that's happened since the COVID-19 shutdown. And I want to touch on what the future holds for the CW DC shows, because one of the problems for DC right now is that because of who owns them, their parent company being Warner Brothers, and because of the different issues they've gone through in the past in terms of rights and sharing of rights and production schedules and overlapping, they seem to kind of have been coming out of, for lack of a better term, the dark ages, because with the resurgence of Marvel, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the success of some of their shows on platforms like ABC and Netflix, and now the release of Disney+, it seemed like DC was falling further and further behind with some of the missteps that they had. But the success of the CW shows gave DC some hope moving forward. But a lot of those hopes and a lot of those plans have kind of been kicked to the wayside because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're seeing that there's a lot of changes in people's television watching habits, because we know already that even when sports do return, and sports is something I talk a lot about on 97.3 ESPN, it's my job. But with the sports returning, the NBA and the NHL are going to have their playoffs in August and September. The NFL starts in September. The NBA and NHL seasons will not start their next year in October. They will, looks like, going to start in December or January. So the shuffling of the sports world is going to shuffle other people's television watching habits. And as a result of the pandemic, we've seen a lot more people watching or rewatching shows on demand, streaming platforms. Maybe their television watching timing is changing because some people have either lost their job or their job is requiring them to work different hours. And when people start going back to work, whenever that is, we know there's a lot of people out of work or a lot of people who are part-time working right now. Their entire lifestyles have changed. So as a result, the CW faces a very interesting set of questions. And they answered one of those questions that I had been wondering about, which is, which was the first show that gets canceled? I knew for months from everything that I had read on and off the record, everything I had heard in rumors, I knew that the television networks were going to start cleaning up because there was no possible way that they were going to have the budgets moving forward to keep doing all these shows, especially with the overall numbers precipitously dropping in terms of viewership, because less and less people have traditional cable and satellite television. More people are watching things on streaming platforms or they're DVRing shows. Very rarely are people watching things as they happen anymore. They're binge watching. They're DVRing 4, 5, 6 shows and then watching them all in order. Even the ESPN 30 for 30, something that you would think that people would say, I have no sports to watch. I need to watch this. Now they're turning around and they're saying, well, I don't need to watch Lance Armstrong's documentary when it comes out. I'll watch the 2 parts back to back. Or I'll watch the Jordan documentary back to back. And ESPN understands that, and they're replaying these, and they're putting them on different time slots, and they're offering them on the ESPN app for you to binge watch. So we're seeing networks adapting to what is going on in the world. Well, the first shoe dropped for the CW as the Riverdale spinoff, Katie Keene, has been canceled. Now, there are rumors that the show will be picked up by another streaming platform, but the point isn't Katie Keene. We don't talk about shows like that here on the podcast because it doesn't fit into the Marvel DC universes. The impact of that is going to have a direct ramification across the CW landscape. Remember, the C and the W is CBS Warner Brothers. So if there's a show getting canceled on the CW, I would expect at least another show possibly be canceled on the CW along with CBS, and maybe some other areas are going to be cut budget-wise across the board. So I want to just kind of do an encapsulation of the different CW shows and talk about what is going on with each one. I wanted to start with Supergirl because I have been intending on reviewing the end of Supergirl for a while now, but life happens and, you get busy, and I apologize. I haven't been able to get to that, but, we're kind of going to do a full CW DC conversation. And again, this is informal. This is not the usual just pure information session. This is going to be a mixture of information and conjecture, or at least, heavily informed conjecture, because Supergirl ended officially on May 17th. But it should be noted that all the CW shows had to end filming early. So as a result, Supergirl was a show that had to reshape their Supergirl was a show that had to reshape their ending. And even though they did see an uptick in viewership over the final 2 episodes after they came back from the hiatus, as the producers were trying to figure out what to do with all these different CW shows, Supergirl did end on a very specific note, which was they handled one threat, but have now been presented a totally new threat, which is Lex Luthor, played by John Cryer, having the power of these immortal aliens. And it's interesting to note that they ended specifically that way. Question marks about Brainy's future, question marks about Alex's future as she's taking on this vigilante mantle now, questions about Martian Manhunter John Jones' future now that the woman that he cares about the most is back in his life on Earth. And Supergirl has a lot of questions to answer as well, because one problem has been handled, but there's an aftermath of a whole other set of problems. I would assume Supergirl will pick up next season where they left off in some way. And the reason why I say in some way is because do not expect to see Supergirl resume filming anytime soon because their star of the show, Melissa Benoist, is pregnant, as we have discussed previously on the Mutant Blitz podcast. And if she announced back in early March that she was pregnant, I would assume that 6 months from March, which would be September or October, is projected when you would expect her to give birth. And then after she gives birth, there's probably going to be a set number of months of maternity leave that she will take to be a mother and take care of her newborn child. So that means that her availability is probably out the window for the rest of 2020. Now, we know that they don't do a lot of the filming for Supergirl in the United States. They do go to Vancouver for a lot of the CW shows. So we know that the location for their filming and the facilities and the setup is in Vancouver, which is an area that can do filming and they can resume in the near future. But without the star of the show, the catalyst of the show, really the only reason why the show still has any audience at all, because there have been points in time in the last few seasons that Supergirl's writers and directors have honestly failed the viewers from getting away from the show's original intent, really making the show more about topics that have nothing to do with superheroes or the original intent of Supergirl by her own creators in the comics, and it's taken them a while to get back on track. And over the last season and a half, they have slowly gotten back on track thanks to the landing of John Cryer as Lex Luthor to bring the show back into focus. But without Benoist at the helm of the main character, the show has some major, major holes that it can't overcome. So what does the future hold for Supergirl? Well, we know it's been renewed. We know the show is going to come back. We know the show has seen a small uptick in viewership again. And on average, the show has held to somewhere between 700 and 900,000 viewers per show over the last couple of years. There have been, up and down, all kinds of dips. We know that the show has not crossed the 2 million threshold since 2018. And that was the mid-season finale involving the crossover event. And the crossovers naturally get a huge viewership. But the part of the purpose of the crossover is you're supposed to draw people to your new show. If you haven't seen the other show, you see that Supergirl interacts with the Flash, and maybe you're a Flash fan, you say, I'll go check out Supergirl. Well, the crossovers are not accomplishing that goal. And we're seeing more and more that certain CW shows just have a concrete audience. So when I think about what the future holds for Supergirl, I think it holds two specific things. Number one, you may see the show Superman and Lois hit the ground running on the CW before you see the return of Supergirl, just because of the fact that you don't want to push Melissa back into production before she's ready. Being a parent is something that cannot be rushed, overlooked, or mistreated. If they mishandle her, it will cause a massive black eye for the entire production company of Berlanti and his team. So it is in their best interest of not just the show, but in the entire CW DC Arrowverse franchise to handle her correctly in order to not receive any backlash or dropouts or negative press from it. Number two, I think Supergirl has to look at the next season as an opportunity to really dig deeper into the history of the supers, because as we saw on the show Krypton on Sci-Fi, which was very well done, and it's a shame it was canceled, I think that show understood something that Supergirl has taken a while to get back to, which is people know the history of Superman in general. And thanks to different cartoons and different movies, and now the television show Supergirl, people have an understanding of Supergirl as well, and they have a knowledge base, whether you're an intermediate or a diehard, of the Kryptonian history. I think that with Lex Luthor becoming more of a player in the landscape of the CW Arrowverse, it's an opportunity for Supergirl to go back down that road of the Luthor versus Kryptonian situation and conflict that now Lena Luthor has now switched sides again. They've resolved that conflict. I think it's an opportunity for them to develop Lena's relationship with Supergirl. I think there's an opportunity to reestablish new alliances. I think that now that all the superheroes are on the same Earth, I would like to see the CW not just wait for the crossovers to have some overlap. Naturally, whether you've read comics or you've watched the MCU movies, there is some natural expectation of characters overlapping because of universal and even layered threats that have a common alliance and a common antagonist, protagonist, and supporting cast setup. And I'm being very hyper general on purpose because I think that there is a natural development between the Flash and Supergirl that I think a lot of people would like to see, but the ending of the Flash's current season leaves some of that overlap in question, in my opinion. And we'll get to the Flash in a little bit later here on the pod. But just to wrap up Supergirl, I think that they're going to have to figure out who would be the best overlap for her and advancing the show. And like I said, in the past, the natural would have been the Flash, but the Flash is kind of in question right now. So my instinct is to say this might be an opportunity to try to create an alliance now that there's changes on Batwoman coming. You know that two of your shows have a specific problem that they have to deal with. They cannot be part of your situation yet. So I think the natural overlap is Superman and Lois. And I think that allowing there to maybe be some cross-pollination between those two shows would help both shows, would show some creative chops from the studio, and an opportunity to maybe use Superman as a fill for maybe Melissa isn't available for all-day production. You know, maybe you say, do we use the launching of the Superman show as a bridge to put the other characters on that show until Melissa is fully ready for Supergirl to maybe launch as a spring show, potentially. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. I think that allowing the Superman and Lois show to have some room to breathe is an opportunity to work on where you really want to go for season 6 for Supergirl. I think that the show has taken a huge step forward in terms of viewer interest. I think that when you look at the fact that Supergirl is still one of the most watched CW shows, is a clear sign that the show has an audience, and you don't want to lose the audience by getting too creative because your star might not be available when you want to resume production. So I think that allowing Superman and Lois room to breathe and develop, maybe incorporating those characters into that show, will allow a natural lead-in for when Supergirl is ready to hit the ground running with Melissa back on set. I think that's the way they should handle it, and I would like to see more Kryptonians versus Lex Luthor. I would like to see them kind of develop that a little bit more and, you know, maybe open up the opportunity to let whatever Lex Luthor does create a new enemy, a new villain. And listen, whether it is something that is directly related to the crossover event that the next crossover CW will do, or whether it's something that is kind of like a mini crisis on the side, I think that they can get creative with that line. They don't have to create an entirely new villain or antagonist altogether. I think that you need to finish the Lex Luthor situation. You need to bring some finality to that. And I think that's the best way for Supergirl to go. Now, I mentioned Batwoman. Batwoman is the most interesting show right now because the show has been renewed. And the show, while it averaged just under 1 million viewers live and a little bit less than that on the DVR and on-demand playbacks, Batwoman saw a specific dip after the massive crisis event. Batwoman saw the greatest loss of viewership of the CW shows post-crisis. While shows like DC Legends of Tomorrow and Black Lightning did see a little boost from the viewership, there were a handful of shows that did see a dip. One of them being The Flash, one of them being Supergirl. But Supergirl did trend back up again after, kind of re-finding their feet, and then the pandemic, then the relaunch, the final 3 episodes. Batwoman did not experience that same uptick. In fact, Batwoman debuted with about 2 million viewers across both live, DVR, and on-demand. By the time the season finale came around, they lost 1 million viewers. That's a number that I don't think can be ignored. And I think that it's a major reason why the show is now going to be afforded the opportunity for a fresh slate. For those who don't know, Ruby Rose is leaving the Batwoman show after 1 season. It is not because of her contract. It is not because of some scandal. It has to do with the fact that she wants to leave, and she wants to leave without any issue. And I think that the pandemic has afforded her a easier exit than maybe she would have been afforded otherwise. And there's a lot of rumors and speculation out there that apparently the amount of physical work that goes into the character of Batwoman was something that bothered her. And there were a lot of semi-confirmed stories out there that she was injured during the Crisis crossover, and that the injuries that she sustained while doing certain stunts during the Crisis shooting led to her wanting to do less stunts when Batwoman resumed, which became apparently a problem on set between her and production in terms of fulfilling the needs of the show moving forward. And since all shows had a shutdown in production, every show's ending was completely different than was originally planned. So the ending for Batwoman, which saw a semi-conclusion to the Kate versus Alice showdown, but also revealed who the Bruce Wayne of the Arrowverse on Earth Prime is, was supposed to lead to a specific opportunity for a Kate Kane versus Hush showdown. Well, now that Kate Kane is no longer on the show because Ruby Rose is going to go away, this is an opportunity now for the producers of Batwoman to start with a clean slate. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to bring in an entirely new Batwoman. And I think they have a golden opportunity to do something that all Batman fans have been craving for and just scratching at the wall, begging and asking you to do. Batwoman has the chance to do for the Arrowverse something that the fans desperately want, which is a version of Batman Beyond in live action. So for those who are not fully initiated, Batman Beyond was a cartoon that was later developed into a comic that is basically one of the largest cult followings of all DC characters. And that is the story of Bruce Wayne is either around 68 or 72 at this point. And a young man comes along and decides he wants to be Batman. And at first, Bruce is completely against it, but later decides it's better that I mentor this young man and help him be the best hero he can be than not. And this is in a kind of like a post-apocalyptic, hyper-technical, futuristic world where Batman Beyond has a high-tech suit, way more high-tech than Batman's original suit. And Bruce Wayne, in some ways, becomes the new Alfred. There is no more Alfred anymore. Alfred's dead. And now Bruce Wayne is the new Alfred, the new Overwatch, the new Oracle, whatever character variation from DC you want. And the show was incredibly successful. The character was reused in multiple ways in comics and in animated television. And the Batman Beyond character had a huge twist when they revealed that the Batman Beyond young man is actually a partial clone of Bruce Wayne, and that's why he is so good at being this new version of Batman, because he has a relation to Bruce Wayne. Now, flipping it over to Batwoman, you've already revealed who Bruce Wayne is in the Arrowverse. You've shown a picture of him. We know that direction is going to happen. The storyline going out there right now is that the way they're going to have Ruby Rose removed from the show is that the current Batwoman is going to die. So that the Kate Kane character will leave a legacy of Batwoman for someone else to come up and take the mantle, and that the new Batwoman is going to be completely different, which is a refreshing idea. I think that while I was 100% behind Ruby Rose playing Kate Kane when the announcement originally happened when the show hit, I was completely against the direction the show went. It was ridiculous that Batwoman was not more proficient as a tactician. If you read the comics, whether it's Batwoman, Kate Kane, whether it's Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, or anybody from the Bat family is incredibly proficient, incredibly trained, has a high level of technical ability and technical support. Kate Kane was not that. She had way too many instances where she would not learn from her mistakes. She had way too many situations where she was working through problems that were really her own making. She did not evolve. She did not grow. She claims that she was reading from Bruce's diary to learn different things, but apparently she didn't learn anything. And it was to the point where, for me as a viewer, I didn't look forward to watching Batwoman. I did not look forward to watching the direction the show was going. I think that this idea, while it may seem like it was a great idea in theory and in pitch, was honestly poorly executed and reminded me of how Gotham totally went sideways as a show. Batwoman seemed to do the same thing. It became way too dark. It became way too cheap of a superhero. And it's actually only appropriate that Kate Kane dies because, frankly, if you kill off the character and you bring in a totally new heroine to take the mantle, you have an opportunity to do what Batman is supposed to be. Batman is a legacy character. And whether it's been Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, whether it's been Batgirl, Batwoman, whether it's been any member of the Bat family, while Batman lives in a dark world, he himself is not a victim of the darkness. He's a byproduct of the darkness, but he is a hero in that dark element. And it's something that goes along with what makes superheroes appealing, is that there's someone you look up to. They're an icon. They always come out on top. They always find a way. And Batman, who is, quote unquote, the world's greatest detective, with all these gadgets because he is a billionaire, the idea is that he is able to figure out things without needing superpowers. And you set up this whole thing on the Crisis on Infinite Earth setup that she's a paragon and that nobody cared. You had a drop of 1 million viewers from her Crisis episode to her first show back after the break. You lost 1 million viewers right there. And then from 1 week to the next, you lost another 100,000 viewers. And then the following week, we saw an uptick in live viewership, but a downtick in DVR and on-demand viewership. Batwoman, while the end number looks good, they averaged 900 and plus thousand viewers for the season, the audience is telling you that it's not because of the lesbian storyline, which in and of itself was, I think, pushed a little too far. There was a lot better way to handle that, honestly. And if you don't believe me, go look at Supergirl. At least they're not too ridiculous. They're preachy about it, but they're not ridiculous in execution. They're just a little preachy and a little bit, I want to sit on my pulpit and tell you, my beliefs and my emotions. But where Batwoman went wrong is that they turned Kate Kane's relationships as Kate, not as Batwoman, into a fiasco. And it made it more of a fiasco when it was Kate's ex, Sophie, now falling for Batwoman, not knowing that Kate is Batwoman, and then Batwoman decides to end the relationship because it became a mess. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what a disservice. What a disservice to the character, the legacy of Batwoman and Batman, and everything that the CW has set up in terms of depth of character and relationships and evolution of relationships. And you literally have this fiasco happening right before my eyes. And I think the rest of the audience saw the same thing. You have a chance now to completely reboot the character, completely reshape it, and now you know who Bruce Wayne is. What if Bruce Wayne now comes back, like Batman Beyond-esque, and becomes the mentor for the new Batwoman and trains her correctly, because Kate Kane was an absolute abomination when it came to fighting. I don't care if you think, I made her look, humanized her. No. You didn't humanize the character by having her get her butt kicked almost every single daggone episode. Batman is supposed to be the greatest fighter in the DC universe. And Batwoman looked more like a retired MMA fighter who has a little bit of military training. That's not a great vigilante. And to wear the Batman cowl and be that pathetic, honestly, at times, was a disgrace. So the show is a great opportunity to hit the reset button and give you a refreshed perspective on the Bat universe. Because, let's be realistic, between Gotham and Batwoman, DC has really botched this entire Bat universe. The Batman history, the Batman mythology, the vision of Batman by the majority of people who grew up reading comics and watching the DC animated series and, even watching some of the pathetic Batman movies like Batman Beyond and Batman and Robin, but were re-energized by the Christopher Nolan retelling of Batman. You have all these opportunities to make Batman incredible and make the mythology of Batman larger than life. And instead, you're just totally fumbling the football as you try to go to the goal line. And you don't even score because you drop the football at the 1-yard line in many cases. So let's hope that Batwoman kind of gets that figured out. A show that I'm completely surprised by is The Flash. The Flash, which has been the number one show on the CW among all properties, not just the superhero shows, which in some cases has almost double the viewership of some of the other CW shows, kind of gave you a letdown. Because I think we might have gotten a little bit better finality to the season finale for The Flash than we got, but all indications are that they're leaving you this massive cliffhanger when it comes to the situation with the mirror universe and when it comes to the relationship between Iris and Barry. And I honestly think it was done very poorly. And I'm hoping that the next season, season 7, which has already been renewed, they clean up. They really need to clean this up. And if they don't clean it up, you're going to have a lot of problems for your crossover events and your cameo episodes and all that, because there's a beautiful opportunity here for Supergirl and the Flash to do more things together. They're on the same Earth now. They already have a preset friendship. But now it feels like this situation with, is this the real Iris? Is this the fake Iris? Is fake Iris really still stuck in the Mirrorverse? Is the Flash now in the Mirrorverse? Is the real Flash? Who's real? Who's not? What's going on? We need some finality. And this goofiness where they had the Speed Force is dead, but how much Speed Force does Barry really have left? And now Barry technically created the Speed Force, but can he resuscitate it? Is there going to be a Speed Force moving forward? Is the negative Speed Force the solution to the Speed Force? My head is spinning now. What made The Flash so much fun is that no matter how crazy things got, you had some sort of finality. You had a conclusive solution for everything. And now it feels like you have not one, not two, but 3 different issues you need to figure out for the start of the next season. And I'm incredibly disappointed by The Flash. I see that the viewership has dipped for The Flash. The Flash has, right now, the fewest number of live viewers than they've ever had in the history of the franchise. There's been a small dip in DVR and on-demand viewing. In fact, the final episode of the season finale, which dropped May 12th, in fact, had half the total viewership than the season premiere for season 6. So I'm hoping The Flash cleans up, because if they don't clean up, what you're basically doing is you're taking your flagship show now that there's no more Arrow, and basically handing the audience a completely fumbled product. And I don't want to see that, because I think Grant Gustin and the actors and actresses on The Flash have done an incredible job with the show. The writing, for the most part, has been very good. It's been a breath of fresh air at times, honestly, and compared to the other DC CW shows. And for them to end season 6 with such a complicated situation is an incredible disappointment. And by the way, it should be noted that you didn't just lose an entire chunk of your audience from the season start to the season end. You lost a huge chunk of your audience from February to May. They lost almost 1 million viewers from February to May. That in of itself has to be concerning. And again, part of this may be people's viewership habits are changing. Part of this may be maybe people are streaming more and people are binging more and they're less interested in week-to-week viewership. I don't know the answer 100%, because I think that, the world in itself is changing as we know it right now for a variety of reasons. But if The Flash has hope to beyond season 7, they have a lot of cleanup to do. And I think it's incredibly disappointing the direction that they ended the show. 2 more properties I want to hit on before we get out of here on the Mutant Blitz podcast is I thought DC Legends of Tomorrow was incredible. I think the show has made an incredible rebound from where it was last year. I understand that viewership for the live product may not, show 100%, but it should be noted that the viewers they lost from the season premiere episode in January, they made up that ground by the time June 2nd hit. So they lost viewers and they brought them back. But overall, DC Legends of Tomorrow was one of the greatest beneficiaries of the Crisis event because it allowed them a completely refreshed sprint for 15 episodes. I like the fact that they're not going the full 20. I think it's an opportunity for the Legends to get very creative, to get very interesting. It's a shame that they've eliminated the Ray Palmer character. I know that Brandon Roth has talked about how he's very disappointed with how he was dismissed from the show. I think that they need to kind of mend some bridges there because there's some missed opportunities there. I think that, spoiler warning, the disappearance of Sarah Lance opens up a lot of opportunities for the next season. I think that for season 6 is an opportunity for them to really give some well-rounded closure for characters like Constantine and for Nate. I think that Sarah, I don't know what the future of the Sarah Lance character is, but there's a lot of rumors that if they go forward with the Arrow spinoff show, Arrow and the Canaries, that she may migrate over to that show. I think that there's an opportunity for her to maybe cement herself more on the Arrow show than stay on the DC Legends show, but that's conversation for another day. I think that I would like to see DC Legends pick up some new characters. I think that you've come full circle with certain characters already, and the dismissal of Ray and now Charlie being off the team as well, you got to fill the void somehow. And I think that for characters like Constantine and Roy, I don't know how much longer they're going to be part of this team. I don't know how much longer Sarah's going to be part of the team. Maybe next season's the final season. Maybe they don't even try to keep going on with the DC Legends show, or maybe they try to morph it into another show altogether. I personally would like to see one of two things happen. You either need to introduce some new characters. For example, I personally would like to see them have a lot of fun because we haven't really seen Blue Beetle in the Arrowverse yet. We really haven't seen a version of Booster Gold, who is a time traveler himself, yet in the universe. I think there's a lot of ways they can play around with the time travel characters. Heck, we haven't even seen a full fleshing out of different characters altogether yet. So I think that there's a couple different ways you can go with this. Again, I would like to see them potentially maybe introduce somebody new, somebody different. Whether they actually do it or not, I'm not 100% sure. I know that one of the problems for the CW is that they're not allowed to use certain characters. They've been told they're not allowed to use the Green Lanterns because the Green Lantern show is coming to HBO Max. Hopefully, maybe. We'll find out. We did play around with the Hawkman, Hawkgirl situation for a while. I think that the show has kind of gone as far as they can with the mystical dark art start with Constantine. There might be one more layer to go with it, but I think maybe it's time to get back to the tech side of things and maybe have a little fun with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and characters like that and introduce them to the team if they want to keep the DC team moving forward. Now, obviously they can go really obscure if they wanted to. I'm not suggesting that, but I do know there's been rumors out there about the Wonder Twins possibly coming to the show. There's been rumors about, what happened to all the Robins in the Arrowverse. We know that Bloodhaven's been dropped as a location for Nightwing. Well, that's more like a Batman situation, but what if one of the Robins showed up on the DC team? What if a Tim Drake or a Dick Grayson, or if you want to get really ridiculous, you could always introduce the Red Hood to the team, and maybe he's a reformed character, and he's kind of like the new anti-hero on the team. Or if you want to go down the road of more of the Constantine characters, I think a character like Zatanna showing up on DC Legends would be a lot of fun. Having that kind of members of the Justice League Dark joining DC Legends of Tomorrow. There's a lot of different ways they can go with it, but I think that the idea of the show has become more fun, has become more, I'm not taking myself too seriously. Let's see how far we can take a lot of these characters and these storylines is the right way to go, especially with the Flash becoming way too serious of a character following the Crisis crossover. So I like where DC Legends of Tomorrow is going. The question is it really going to work long term? Finally, I'm going to wrap up with Stargirl. Stargirl is the show that dropped on May 19th. It is a brand new show, brand new everything, and it is a retelling of a version of superheroes from the golden age of comics. The Justice Society of America has always been a very interesting plot point for DC. It has been an opportunity for them to introduce the multiverse. It has been an opportunity for them to create different versions of heroes going back and forth. We know that there were versions of Green Lantern before Hal Jordan ever came along. There was the Jay Garrick Flash before Barry Allen ever came along. We know that characters like Dr. Midnight and Hawkman and others have been modified and recreated and reformed in different variations over the years. So Stargirl seems to be playing around with a retelling of characters. And I'm not 100% sold on the show yet. I think that it's a show for me that is not easily digestible because it feels like there's a lot of more questions than answered thrown at us each week. And we're only 7 episodes in, and it feels like the show already has given us a young superhero feel. It's almost like they're taking the Justice Society of America and they're stealing ideas from Young Justice, the cartoon show, while also trying to recreate a Teen Titans feel in a live-action show. Again, I don't think it's a bad show so far, but it's a lot less digestibly fun as I was hoping for. You know, the first couple episodes gave a fun feel to the show, but now that we're deeper and deeper into the episodes, I'm kind of getting the feeling that this, a new generation of justice, which is the slogan for this season, kind of has a feeling that they're really trying too hard to recreate something that they should have just gone with in the first place. If you wanted to do Young Justice or Teen Titans, you should have just done Young Justice or Teen Titans. There's no point in recreating the Justice Society of America for a modern age and stealing all the concepts from other shows and other comics to fuel this story. And this is where I get frustrated with DC and where I love Marvel so much more. There is a much larger commitment by the Marvel production company, by the studio, by the writers, by the post-production, by everybody involved in Marvel to stay true to the original intent of the characters as much as humanly possible. DC feels like they've given way too much carte blanche to the CW. I'm not a believer in the direction they're going with Stargirl. I think the actress is doing a solid job. I think the star of the show is actually Luke Wilson. Him playing Pat Dugan is completely incredible and hilarious. I think that that's the real comedic element of the show. The fact that the cosmic staff talks to Stargirl is kind of weird. It feels like they're stealing from Doctor Strange a little bit, which I'm not thrilled about. It feels like the entire show is stealing elements from other properties and other shows. It's really not a lot of originality going on there. And I understand that a lot of the show's ideas were taken from different comics that Jeff Johns has written. Jeff Johns, a longtime DC comic writer and a part of the DC universe for a long time in different roles. I understand that this show is in some ways a pet project for him. I expect this show to be renewed for season 2 because you didn't come this far just to drop the show. But I really hope that they stop getting so experimental. This whole slogan by CW, Dare to Defy, really feels like it's an excuse for them to go as far away from the original intent and get as excessively creative as possible with their shows. And while I like the idea of playing around with a concept that you haven't done yet before, which is Justice Society of America, and I like the fact you're introducing something completely new to the screen, there's a way to do it that is not blatantly stealing ideas from everybody else. This idea of the young version of heroes, we've seen this before a million times over. It didn't have to just completely recreate something to do that storyline. You could have done something that's already there for you in the comics. And it feels like the people at CW are trying so hard to do something new and something different, something cool and fun and fresh. And they're being fueled by a high number of viewers that realistically, do you have an average of 1 million live viewers a show because it's a great show or because people have nothing else to watch? And I think that's where the issue is. We don't know yet if the show is doing well because people have nothing else to watch or because the show is being accepted that much by the general public. I understand that it's gotten a lot of good viewer ratings in terms of people's interest. There's a lot of interest. It's got one of the highest viewer ratings of a show, of any CW show that's debuted since the debut of The Flash. But there's something to be said for the fact that are people enjoying it because they really love it and they really love the direction it's going in? Or do they like it because it's new and they have nothing else to watch? And I think that's the issue with the CW moving forward. Are they going to try so hard to be different and creative that they lose the entire original intent of these characters and the DC universe gets lost in the minutia? I think that's the concern. I think that the CW really needs to take some lessons from Marvel in that there's a way to do this without being too ridiculous. And there's also an opportunity for you to admit where you went wrong. You know, Marvel came along with the Inhumans. It didn't work out. They pulled the plug. You know, Marvel looked at the direction that they were going with the television properties, and they pulled the plug on it. They pulled the plug on Cloak and Dagger. They're ending Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this summer. They're changing their entire philosophy with the shows. They're going to be launched on the Disney Plus platform. They had success with Agent Carter. They didn't have as much success with, for example, The Runaways, which is a Hulu property. They were going to launch all these shows on Hulu. They pulled the plug on pretty much all of them. They were going to do a Ghost Rider show. They pulled the plug on that. And I think the CW can learn from Marvel and say, having a ton of shows and just producing stuff is not the answer. Producing good content really is the solution. And I think for DC moving forward, with the variations they're doing in the movies and the direction the CW shows are going, and a lot of questions about the DC streaming platform, about the viability of it long term, considering the app platform is not available easily in multiple places like Disney Plus is. There's something to be said for the fact that Warner and the CW and DC Entertainment really need to take a long-term look at what they're doing with their properties and maybe stop being so ridiculous and trying to change everything constantly and get back to the original intent of these characters. You know, there's a reason why people love the characters for so many years. People wanted to watch these characters eventually in live action, and it isn't because it's an opportunity for you to completely adulterate the character along the way. It's an opportunity for you to give the audience what they want, which is, we saw these characters, we love them for a reason, now give us that reason back to enjoy the characters and stop ruining it for us. I'm Josh Hennig. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Mutant Blitz Podcast. Thank you for subscribing to this YouTube channel. I know we've been very sports focused lately because that's what I've been doing on 97.3 ESPN. But along the way, we will take opportunities to review the Marvel shows and movies And if DC comes out with anything interesting, we'll go along. But I'm giving you all the warning right now that I have officially fatigued with the CW and the DC properties. And I think that until they give me something more compelling, we probably won't be doing a lot of solo reviews of the shows. There'll be more kind of like encapsulations like this episode was. But hit subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter at Josh Hennig if you have any questions or thoughts as well. We'll drop it in the comment section below. I'm Josh Hennig. I'll catch you next time. This has been episode 61 of the Mutant Blitz Podcast.